Right, let me share with you the details of the first random opinion survey insights interview I did. That was it. I did it. So that was on the 30th of March 2022. All right, so this is something I've been working towards for quite a long time. I've been thinking we've got to make this thing practical. If you really want to solve the problem of domestic violence, whether against men or women, or women, it's important to connect with people that are most likely to be in a professional position, that are stakeholders and are actually be in a position to influence change, and also who would have information about the pattern of occurrence of this problem. And I think there are too many non-professionals, not just medically but just generally, even legally, that are in the field. So I think by doing this, we get to bring insights from people who are actually trained and are most likely to have a better understanding of how to address the issue, how to look at the issues. Anyway, let me not ramble. So this is the first edition. I spoke with this gentleman. He's the medical director of I would call it a medium-sized medical facility. Okay, several employees and all that, but in a bit of a high-profile area. And you can imagine the kind of clients that kind of person will have. So he's somebody that's I think he cuts across because he does have low-income earners who also come to his hospital or to his clinic. So you see from the title there, I'm quoting him. Why is it that he said at a point, he was telling me the story, and I'm going to take you through the story. Why is it that there are so many married men on the streets at night? What do they do? What do they look for? Don't they have wives? He said that was one of the questions he had to ask one of his patients. This was while he was narrating to me one of several stories he told me. Okay, and I chose to use that to highlight, as you can imagine, since I'm talking about domestic violence against men primarily and domestic violence in general, I wanted to highlight one of the more neglected aspects of domestic violence problem. You know, the reason why men stay out so late, the reason why you see some men in beer parlors. I worked in a large brewing multinational for 7 years, and I rose very rapidly into senior management position. And I remember that because I was somebody that kept very long hours. I was a bachelor for the most of my time there. It was in my last year or so that I then had a family. I started a family. So I used to wonder about my colleagues who would now I'm not saying that they were having problems at home. I'm just saying that I used to wonder. Some of them would close from work and they wouldn't go home. They would always be in the bar and making jokes, chatting away, making jest of one another. But I used to wonder, why would these people go? They have wives, don't they? They have kids. Why don't you just close and go home? Because I've always been a family-minded person. So for me, I felt, what do you do again? And I was someone that was like spending almost 18 hours in the brewery because I was a bachelor. There was nothing at home. But I knew if I got married, I knew if I had kids, I would want to rush home to them. So I was wondering, I used to tell some of my colleagues, what is it with these guys? Then they were mostly elders, older people. I said, why don't they go home? I'm not saying that those people at that time were having that problem, but it was one of the things that used to strike me. And I used to wonder about bars where you see all these people stay so late. Why don't these men go home? I wondered about that myself. So when this man said it actually was something that resonated with me. But let me quickly get you through into the meat of the matter. So you all know, if you're following me, I published this domestic violence against men news in form of a diary now. I've converted it to a diary. And in the diary, I talk about my own experience of domestic violence, my story. I've been interviewed by several media platforms now, and the goal is I want to give some visibility to the challenges that men face when they are authentic victims of violence. And there are many men who are silently going through suffering as victims of domestic violence and abuse. And believe me, even verbal abuse is violence, and it actually can be more devastating and more lasting and damaging in impact than even physical violence. So that's why I do this. I want to draw attention to it. I want with my own children, when they see the kind of visibility I'm getting and when they see what I'm doing, I want them to take a message from that and take some instruction from that to guide themselves in their lives, and to unlearn what they possibly learned from what they saw their mother doing to me over the course of several years. All right, so this is the verbatim audio to text transcript. So I actually interviewed this man I was in his office in the clinic. At night, it was around 6:50. Let's just say 7 p.m. that he finally granted me audience. To be fair to him, he didn't even waste time at all when he was told. He simply told me to come in. Told them to tell me to come in to his office, and I asked only for 5 minutes. And to be fair to him again, he was such a gracious gentleman. He gave me up to 10 minutes. I guess because listening to him, he was also passionate. He did have an opinion, and quite strong opinions about the subject. So in fact, he was just telling me stories, giving me examples. It was amazing. So this shows that this is something that people can relate to. This was a busy gentleman who was right on his laptop working at that time, on his computer, desktop computer, when I came, and he put aside everything to talk to me, and like I said, it took about 10 minutes, even though we actually planned 5 minutes originally, but we were really engrossed. For obvious reasons, I hope everybody will understand, I cannot share with you the actual audio recording, not just because he of course said that I should not, but also because even if I were to do that, it's going to put a lot of people at risk. Himself, his professional practice, his patients who share those details with him, those are confidential stuff. Of course, he didn't mention names of patients to me, but he did tell me the stories. And the best we can do to allow this kind of thing to flow and other people to be willing to talk to me is to make sure we respect the privacy of everybody that may be involved. So to that length, for that reason, there will not be any access I will grant you to the audio recording of that interview, but it is the interview that I have transcribed here. For the most part, it's verbatim. A few things I've done maybe to just edit for clarity or to paraphrase. Other than that, it's exactly what he said. I'm going to be reading out his exact words. So he shares true stories and gives real life examples from interactions with male and female patients. So he does give examples of male and female patients, and I hope that this will help you to get a better perspective, gain a better understanding of the context in which I believe or in which domestic violence issues should be looked at. And you will listen to this man, you will listen to what he said. I'm going to read them out, and you will see that he was very balanced in the way he was talking about it, and he was raising very valid issues. And if this is coming from a medical professional, I think we should take it seriously, because this is a man that people will confide in normally, things they will not even tell their closest friends. You will imagine this kind of professional, they are the people that tend to hear a lot of things, and because people know that they are sworn to oath of secrecy, they kind of voice their deepest concerns. So some people have poured their hearts out to him, and he was able to share some of it with us. So I hope you will find this useful, and please share with others if you do. All right. Right. The first question I asked him after the introductions was, have you been having cases of male patients reporting domestic violence, especially the physical side? Please remember, if you're listening to this, I am an advocate for men's rights. All right. I'm a male survivor of domestic violence. I have spoken on several media outlets now, and I have been I've published a lot of stuff. I do have quite a lot of material if I wanted to add more more proof of what I'm saying, but I do have enough already that's out there in the internet space. So if you go to the links you see, that the ones I've mentioned that are inside this publication as well, you will be able to check out my stories. If you want a copy of this is actually the transcript. I've done it as a PDF. All right, so I have this service I offer, which is called the Pimp Your Transcript, PIT. All right, so I just transcribe a document and then I dress it up. It looks attractive and all that. So just to make it more appealing for people. But in this case, I've done this for this particular transcript because I want to make sure that people can get access to the exact things that were said in my interviews, and then they can follow the links in the document to actually watch the video or listen to the video podcast I would do to go with it. If and when somebody does accept to allow me to use the actual recording, then you will of course see the video or the audio. You listen to the audio in the exact as is format that it occurs. So for now, this is what we have. If you want a copy of this, just reach out to me using the contact details you will see in the description box for this video, and I'll send you the PDF. Basically, just send me an email via tvam@tksola.com and just tell me you want this document. That's all. Just send me an email with your name and your WhatsApp number, because I'm going to send it to you through WhatsApp. I cannot start attaching things to emails. Just send it to I'll send you the link on WhatsApp. That makes you, and that also gets you into my network, because I do have a distribution network I use, and the goal is to create awareness. So we want as many people as possible to know about this and to become sensitive to what men are going through, because there are some men that are actually genuine victims of abuse at the hands of women, not because they can beat them up, but because they don't want to. They have been trained and brought up, and they know it will be wrong to do that, and yet the woman is taking advantage of that to abuse them. So we do have men like that, and we want to give them a voice. All right, so he answered my question. When I asked that question, he said yes, it's happening. All right, so then I went to the second question, because I wanted to make it something that he will be the one doing most of the talking. What about the issue of self-defense often claimed by wives? And when I said this to him, I told him about the interview done by Ivy Khan at Television Continental. She did a story where she was talking about men being on the receiving end of violence to the extent that they were being killed. And I think around the lockdown was when she published that story, where she interviewed Chinyere Okonkwo of the Federal Institute of Neuro. Oh, I've forgotten that facility at Yaba, right, where you get the mental health facility. Right, sorry, I can't remember the name, but check in the description, you see the links to all these things I'm mentioning. So she did that interview with that lady and also with the commissioner of police, and they were talking about men getting killed by their wives and the reasons why it was happening. And there was one particular angle that was looked at, in which there was a lady that was interviewed, the owner of an NGO, I think Project Alert, where she was making the point that, oh, it was women fighting back. They were tired of being abused and beaten up, and they were then fighting back in self-defense. And I said in the particular video I did, reacting to that, well, that is one explanation, but there are cases in which the woman was not fighting back. The woman was actually abusing the man, and the man was actually trying to defend himself, so and eventually didn't succeed, so he got killed. That has happened. I could have died. The things I went through, I mean, it will be so many hot water on my body, so many things like that. So again, like I said, there are so many links you can check in the description box. You will see, you have the opportunity to watch my interviews and listen to my story and all of that. All right, so I asked him that question by giving him that background, that there was this TVC documentary where they talked about men being killed by their wives. Okay, and I said, and they claim it's self-defense. What did he think about it? I said, well, I don't know how to put this, but the truth is that most of the time, really, it's the man that is the culprit. When you mean violence, in this case, that's physical. He was kind of double checking with me, and I told him, yes, I was talking about, for that particular question, physical violence. He said, it's very rare to see a man who will marry a woman that is stronger than him. So that really has removed the possibility of that happening in most cases. In other words, whether the woman was beating up the man. He said, but there are some few cases that we had where the woman actually inflicted injury on the man. The man said he had to restrain himself, and that if he had responded, that she would not be alive. He was talking about one of his patients who had told him about how he got it. He came for the treatment apparently, and they were discussing and saying, look, just restrain myself, I would have killed her. And that happens a lot, where the man, and in my case, I was always telling my ex-partner, and she was mocking me. She used to mock me. She would say, initially she would say, beat me now. Then she got the point, say, all you do is push, all you do, you cannot fight, you cannot handle me, you cannot do more than a dead rat, and all of that. So the thing is, she knew from experience that I would not. She had provoked me so long, and I would not. So she had somebody said that they get more confidence from knowing that you are not going to, so they take more liberties. And we're talking about not all women, abusive women. We're talking about the bad women. We have bad men, we have bad women. Please keep that in mind. So that was his response. So I asked him another question. Is provocation enough justification to be physically violent? Is provocation enough justification to be physically violent? In this regard, this question I picked up from the video of again on TVC, but this time around it was this lady's on the program, Burayo and her friends, on Your View. Okay, and they had a video, an edition of their show that was titled along those lines. Well, is there any justification for? Is there any point that provocation will justify you inflicting violence or injury on somebody else? So he said no, it's not. That is, there's no justification. All right. If you justify the woman's physical violence, then you should also justify the man's physical violence. Because if we're talking, I'm quoting him. Because if we're talking of equality in marriage, it means that the man must not beat the woman, and that should be vice versa. But we're all human, and if you push anybody long enough, he or she will snap. In the Bible, Moses was pushed to the wall and he responded. Yes, yet it is said that Moses was the meekest person, the most humble person, and people still managed to push him to his limit. So it's the same thing too in marriage. Men, generally, we have our egos, and so sometimes some women know that and they will want to test us to that level. All right. In fact, sometimes the woman will do it, then say, "Oh yeah, beat me now." I just give an example like that. So he continues. Now, I went to another question. What do you think about the non-physical aspect or psychological, emotional, and verbal violence? We had talked about physical. He had verified that, and that was what I allowed him to talk about. And I wanted to talk about this other aspect. So I asked him, under the circumstance, the man can lose control and explode. So over time, what do you think the impact of that can be on the person? So this was his response. He said, the way I see it from what I've observed in people's marriages is that the physical abuse is done by the man, but most of the mental and psychological is done by the woman. You see this thing he said here is so important, and I want to quickly, just before I continue reading his response, I want to jump to a quote I have referred to people to repeatedly, and I think it's so important. So let me just bring it up. Let's hope. Okay, great. I've used it several times, and I continue to try to bring it into every discussion I have, because like I said, people neglect this aspect, and yet it is actually a very fundamental. It can be a root cause many times. All right, and it's been recognized in research. I'm going to give you two quotations, one from this person I'm going to quote now, and another one from a research paper. So I'm going to read it out, and I'll tell you who the person is that I'm quoting. When you talk of abuse, the victims of abuse have been men. What you see as physical violence at home is usually a response of the person who has been pushed beyond limit. You're treating the symptoms, you're not treating the cause. Now, the person being quoted here is Professor Amanda Banks, a professor of psychology. These words were given to me by a gentleman who is a practicing psychiatrist in the UK, in London, and he attended this program in some years ago, the University of West London. And this lady is a professor of psychology, and the program the gentleman attended, was a master's program titled Family Intervention Therapy. And this is a person who has told me several stories of domestic violence that led to court cases that had women sent to jail, Nigerian couples in the UK. So he's somebody that's very familiar with this subject matter. And so, he quoted this and said this was one of the things that gave him a kind of it was a kind of an aha moment for him. It made him realize that he had been missing something that was very significant, because all the while he had also been part of the bandwagon, just blaming men, without thinking. There was just this stereotype everybody accepted. So from then on, he said he put this into context and used it as a basis for assessing every case he came across. Now I'm going to also, before I continue, take you to another quote. This time around, it's from a research paper, and this has to do with the concept of the battered man. My diary is the diary of a battered man, and it was very important for me to emphasize and provide evidence to support this perspective I'm trying to propagate or to preach. That is that there are men who are also victims of abuse, and those men are actually battered men. So it came to a point where it was necessary to be able to define what a battered man was, because there are men who get injured who have been beaten up their wives before then. So this definition provided by a PhD degree holder who was a research partner to another lady. Well, he's a man, but he was a research partner to a lady that did a larger study that found that men had been victims, and so that study generated some argument, controversy, and then he had to do some responses. And this is one of the things he said in the presentation he did, titled "Domestic Violence: Not an Even Playing Field." And again, there will be a link in the description box for this video. You can check out the links. So I'm going to quote him now. Indeed, men are hit by their wives, they are injured, and some are killed. So this is actually a definition of a battered man. Indeed, men are hit by their wives, they are injured, and some are killed. But are all men hit by women battered? No. Men who beat their wives, who use emotional abuse and blackmail to control their wives, and are then hit or even harmed, cannot be considered battered men. A battered man is one who is physically injured by a wife or partner and has not physically struck or psychologically provoked her. No, that's the reference there. And this was in a paper. I picked it up. You can see the URL right here for that paper, that PDF. Now, I'm going to put the link in the description. You can check it out. Now, and then if you need more details, just send me a message, dvam@tksole.com. Anything at tksole.com. I'll get the email. Just tell me what you need. I'll send you the details. I didn't manufacture this. This is something actually. And there's a lot of material in this regard. There's a mass of material that supports all this. In fact, there's been a paper that says that women, what's the name now? British Psychological Society. There was a presentation that was done to them, a research-based presentation from University of Cumbria. Dr. Elizabeth Bates, okay, she did that research study, and then found out that women were found in a survey of 1,000 young couples, that women were found to be tended to be more aggressive and more abusive in relationships than men. I mean, physically aggressive. This study found out that actually they were doing more of beating, hitting, not just pushing, hitting and threatening with a weapon and things like that. This was a study that was done in the UK. The university, I believe, is in Scotland. All right, and so they had that presentation to the British Psychological Society, and it was really kind of something that was throwing a different light to everything. And the chairman of Mankind Initiative, which is an NGO that supports men in the UK, I've forgotten his name again now. I think it's Brooks. I can't remember his name now, his full name, Brooks. But the chairman of Mankind Initiative, they have a Facebook page and a website as well. You can check them out on Google. And he was saying that was like something that enabled us to now be able to acknowledge that men should be given equal treatment in terms of when they complain about domestic violence as what is given to women. After all, we're preaching equality of the genders, so this should apply as well when it comes to domestic violence. If a woman can do what a man can do, that means she's capable of violence just like a man is capable of violence. So I'll leave you with those. I wanted to just slot those in before I continue because I think it's important. So he continues by saying, I asked one of my patients a question: why is it that there are so many men? He was trying to give reason for what he said about the psychological aspect of it being done more by the woman. Okay, and he wanted to illustrate with a story, a true story. So he asked one of his patients a question: why is it that there are so many married men, on the streets at night? What do they look for? Don't they have wives? He said, then there was one of them that I know, and after treating him, he said he used to ask. Apparently, he was asking this question of his male patients. He said one of them then told him, I go my girlfriend house, so. And he said he told him, why not go home? He said the patient replied, doctor, no, na trouble you won't make I go meet. I beg, let me go and hang out, drink finish. Okay, let me continue from. And when I reach home, I'll go and sleep. That's it. So apparently the man wants to just get himself, to an extent where he will be a bit numb, and whatever was said to him will not get into his consciousness, and he will be able to just go to bed and not be affected by it the next day. That kind of thing. What drinking does to you? It numbs you. It makes your psychomotor reflexes are duller. So you will not process things as well as you would when your mind is sharp and clear, not dulled by the influence of alcohol. So this is what this man was apparently trying to do. I was saying something about my colleagues at work. I was saying I was always wondering why they used to stay in the bar. I'm not saying they were having problems at home, but it used to kind of bother me. I used to wonder. So and then the doctor then said, even the Bible says that it's better to live on the roof than with a nagging wife. I know we all know the passage in the Bible. Well, I don't know the exact passage. I know that the Bible says, I cannot remember where it's said. I'm not a religious person. So he goes on to say, we all have our own faults, mind you. But the only thing about our own society and the way things are done when it comes to domestic violence, the man tends to be blamed more than the woman. When a woman beats you and you beat her, they blame you. And then when you want to discipline a woman, they say, don't you see she's a woman? He said one person said that to me and he said he told the person, don't say that. I have a wife at home and she's not sick. When you say, don't you know she's a woman, does it mean women don't have sense? Are they not reasonable? And she was using his wife as an example. He said she'll be talking. So he now went on to talk again, and to say one said she'll be talking. They claim that they are more intelligent, but this attitude, does it reflect intelligence? And he makes a valid point there. I'm sure you agree. Look, you are intelligent, and yet you continue to say provocative things to a person that has the capacity to literally destroy you if he chooses to be in his elements, physically and by way of inflicting violence. And you continue to provoke the person. What is likely to happen? It's like poking a snake. That's poisonous. What is going to happen if the snake strikes you? That's the thing. They do that because society has assured them that it will blame the man, and they know that they can get sympathy. Okay, so that's why they do it. So he said he told the person that told him that, don't you know it's a woman? He said, I have a wife at home who controls her mouth, who controls herself. I have a mother who is also good at self-control. So you can't tell me a woman cannot do it. In other words, you can't tell me a woman cannot control herself. Then he continues, most of the time the woman tends to punish the man by deprivation. He's going to all our ways again, non-violent, you understand, not physical. Sex is the main thing. That's their greatest weapon. And most times in marriage, the problem is usually caused by sex and money, those two. So if the man, I highlighted those, but he continues again. So if the man doesn't have money and the woman is not giving the man sex, he closes from work and goes elsewhere since he can't get sex at home. And the woman, when the man goes to work, her ex-boyfriend calls her, and when the man starts talking, the woman will now wash him down by asking, what have you done since you married me? Look at this and look at that. So many men in marriages are stressed, and the pressure is not just from work but from the home. A man might be happy with his job, but the moment the wife starts complaining, comparing him with friends and neighbors, that's when the man will start looking at himself and at what he is bringing home, that which he thought was enough. And so when he closes from work, is he supposed to go home to meet the person that will tell him he's not good enough? That man said he cannot go home without taking a bottle of beer. I told him, that's your liver you are playing with. He said, no, we'll deal with that later. This one I have at home is worse than hypertension. No. See, now there are many men in that kind of situation. He's continuing. Some have decided to get another wife elsewhere. This is true. When the heat is too much, he will shift. But you see, in that case, that's when the woman is on the receiving end. She cannot afford to have another household. In fact, when a woman does that, that's if a woman now goes out, going out, it's going to be a big blow to her face. So she softly decides, for those that do it, not all of them, he's talking still, I'm quoting him continuously now. She softly decides to do it during the day when the man has gone to work. The man goes out. She's now saying the woman can also do it, but she cannot really afford to do so much of that. You understand? And she's going to do it because it can blow up in her face. She's going to do it without letting it be known. So, one of my patients said she went to a club with her ex-boyfriend from before she got married and saw her husband with another girl in the club apparently. I said, did he recognize you? He said he asked her, did he recognize you? She said, no, that the way she dressed with her wig and everything, that there was no way. But she said she took note of that girl, that she was going to deal with her. The doctor now said, he asked her. I said, why do you have to deal with her? It's your husband you have issues with. Now two of them did the same problem. She said no, so that's where he used to go. The lady was justifying it and all of that. So you can see the kind of stories he's telling. These are things people have voiced out to him, probably frustration. And you can imagine how bad things must be for such couples. They're still living in the same household, but they are two worlds apart. So I asked him this fourth question. What about narcissism? Anybody that knows me knows I talk about that. My ex-partner is a closet narcissist. I cannot go into that now. I'm going to do a special video on narcissism. I'm going to talk about the characteristics of a narcissist. And it's important for you to understand that there are quite a number of narcissistic human beings in the Nigerian social space, male and female. And you need to know what the traits are. So before you allow them to run you mad, because they will drive you mad. It's impossible to live with a narcissist and be your normal self. You will suffer for it physically and emotionally. You will suffer for it. So the best thing is you understand how to identify a narcissist, and when you identify and confirm that the person is a narcissist, you know how to protect yourself from such a person. Alright, so I asked him, what about narcissism? Do you have issues like that? The medical director then answered me, well, it happens from time to time, especially from the woman's side. But you see, this our society is one in which the men are not encouraged to complain. If the men could speak up and be listened to, a lot of things will be revealed. If you speak up now, they will say you have problems. Now, that's the end of this transcript. That's the end of it. It was 10 minutes. He got a phone call and I just told him, man, thanks so much. You used more time than he actually had a timer. The timer rang at 5 minutes on, but he was talking at that time. So we continued and he told me no problem. And we kept talking. By the time that phone call came in, I looked at it and I said, look, this man has given me more value than ever. Let me just end it and let this man get back to his work. So we thanked each other, and I promised him I'll send him a link to my interviews and all that. And I assured him that I will not publish his details or whatever, that I will just do this in an anonymous manner, and I'll send him a coffee. So if I have not reached out to him since then, I won't even send him the things I promised. I'm going to send everything at once, along with this video link and the PDF as well, so he can see it and probably share it with other people. Oh, well, he might not share it, like maybe people might, put one and one together and get two for him, knowing that he's the one that was interviewed. Whatever the case, at least it will give him some insights. So that was it. I'll tell you this. This interaction with this gentleman convinced me that there's a need to connect with as many people in the medical profession as possible, even the one in the mental health field. Because see, the aspect of narcissism, he made a very valid point there. If a man is at the receiving end of abuse from a narcissistic wife, it's very difficult to prove. I am living proof of it. I know what it took me to expose my partner. This was somebody that people who knew her would call her Oniwa Tutu, somebody with a cool nature, pleasant character, agreeable personality. That was the one she showed the people in the outside world. In the house, she was a monster, and I and the kids had to deal with it for years before she got to the point where I said I was no longer going to stay with her in a relationship, and I was going to seek to separate. And then she began to groom my kids to attack me and turn them against me by brainwashing them. If you check my channel, you will see that I have stuff in which I've mentioned a woman called Jane Felix Obunda, who talks about how women turn their children against their fathers. I'm winning my kids back one by one, and I know I will win all of them back. And it's not funny, however, when you have kids that you've loved and taken care of suddenly acting with no reason whatsoever negatively against you and joining their mother to attack you, sometimes physically, to the point of inflicting injuries on you that lead you to the hospital. I ended up in Igbobi hospital with a complete dislocation of my left arm, what they call those two bones. I really was lucky that the gentleman who was on duty, who was available that night, was on his way home, was still around, because he was one of the seasoned veterans that was able to address my problem. The gentleman, the younger person there, they said there was no way he could have treated me correctly, and if that thing had stayed beyond 24 hours, I was told that I would never have recovered proper use of that arm again. So what I'm trying to say in essence is this: narcissism is something that is very difficult to, when it's non-physical and it's a narcissistic abuser that's at it. They are very cunning abusers. So there are abusive people, then there are narcissistically abusive people. Those are two types of abusers. If you have an abusive person, those ones can be talked to and they can be helped to change. You see, the narcissistic abuser, they cannot change. Forget it. I have read so much about it. I have read so much research by professionals in and out of Asia and America, and it's the same conclusion. You need to just get away from the narcissistic abuser. So what is a narcissistic abuser? I'll talk about that in the next video I'll do, because I think it's important at this point. The medical director said something, and I think that's the reason why it's important for me to do something on narcissism. He said, because in that case, you need to be listened to for people to understand what you're trying to describe. But many Nigerians don't even know what a narcissist is. I told one Nigerian about a narcissist, an elderly person, an adult in the professional field, and he was saying, "You mean German Nazi?" I said, "No, I said narcissism. It's not German Nazi. That's a different thing." So the person did not understand, and many Nigerians don't know what narcissism is, and some of them are narcissistic. So it's important that we identify what those traits of a narcissist are, so that we can help people to understand when they are dealing with one, and they know how to protect themselves before they get irreparably damaged by that person. But more importantly, let's just end this video. That's it. If you would like to get a copy of this, like I said, just send me an email. Alright, tvam@tksole.com, tksole.com, and just with your name and your WhatsApp number, and I will send it to you. I'll send you the download link and some other useful resources on this theme. It's something I'm trying to kind of create a lot of awareness about. It's something I'm very, very passionate about. Get more invitations now and all that. I'm available. Call me, invite me. I'll be glad to support you to create awareness about this. So it's something that I would like as many people as possible to come on board. It's not to say that it's just men, but it's not that I know that there's a lot of support available for men. There's literally nothing exists in terms of support so there's a lot of support available for women, but there's literally nothing available by way of support. No shelters, not even just professional help for men at all. In fact, when you go out as a man looking for help in this thing, you will actually get yourself subjected to secondary abuse by the people you are looking for help from 99% of the time. And I'm saying this with every sense of responsibility. I have had terrible experiences, and a lot of them are going to narrate in videos that will follow this one. So please understand, this is I was interviewed on Nigeria Info Relationship 360. That's it. Olumide Omoshebi, the CEO of Nurses Help, excellent gentleman. I shared my story, and I've spoken at I was interviewed on channel television as well. But again, the links will be in the description box of this video. I just want to end with this. I think it's important. You know, this is the era of equality. I watched a video yesterday where an American lady, African American lady, was talking to a gentleman, the owner of a Poor Man's Podcast. He does a great job on his videos, and he was telling them, talking about the fact that men are not equal, women and men are not equal in terms of biology. And the woman was saying, no, there's no difference. There's no difference. And the guy was looking at, how can you say there's no difference? He said there's no difference between men and women. And the lady was saying this. If there's no difference between men and women, then why you say you're weaker when it comes to issues of domestic violence in relationships? Why do you want them to give you special consideration against the man? Oh, the man was beating you up. If there is no difference, then you had equal opportunity to beat him up in return. You know, why do you say the man has an advantage? What do you mean? If you say you are equal to a man, you can do sports with a man, you can go to war like a man, you can do any physical activity same as a man, you can match the man strength for strength. Then why should you want special treatment when it comes to domestic violence? That's what this quote is about. Time magazine did a story on this lady, the goalkeeper of the American team, the victorious American team. And again, you can check out the story, but they use her as a case study, and they were saying we cannot argue that biology should not keep women from being soldiers, while treating women as fragile and harmless in domestic battles. And the lady this goalkeeper had been sent to, I think, to jail or some punishment because of domestic violence she inflicted on people in her environment, you know, some relatives. And that's what typically a man would be expected to do, but she did it. And Hope Solo, that's her name, the goalkeeper for the American female football team, you know. And so women are claiming that they are equal to men, but when it comes to violence, they want to be seen as vulnerable and fickle. That doesn't make any sense. That's hypocrisy. That's a double standard. It doesn't make any sense. So the whole objective of this diary and the messages I'm preaching is to make it clear that if women want to be given all that attention, then men deserve to be given just as much attention as well. Why? Because there's equality. There's no difference between men and women. Therefore, men should also get the same support and attention that women are getting. All right. I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, reach out to me using the contact details that appear on your screen. I wish you well.